Welcome back to Get Down to Business, the show all about small business, jobs, and entrepreneurship. So continuing our conversation about amazing people doing amazing things and writing amazing books. I'm absolutely thrilled to have Sharon Sloane, the CEO of Will Interactive and the author of The Thriving Clinician, which shares real stories of physicians and nurses and the true problems they face. Sharon, welcome to the program.
Thank you. Delightful to be here, Shalom. Thank you for having me.
It's such a pleasure to have you. You have a very interesting background personally and, of course, in business. And I guess, again, the theme of today is people sharing best insights and practices. So, Sharon, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Well, I really came at what we do kind of sideways. I had been involved with education and training and counseling for a number of years. And I realized that so much of what was passing for education and training was really just giving people knowledge, information, and skills, but they weren't really applying it. It wasn't engaging people emotionally as well as cognitively. And so my dad, who was an amazing force in my life and a very wonderful person and successful entrepreneur, said, well, if you don't think it's doing what it needs to do, I suggest you invent something better and find brilliant people to work with you. So we followed that advice and invented and patented what became known as an interactive behavior modification system, lots of words, but really a form of interactive movie that blends the science of learning and psychology with technology and allows us to actually engage people at a level that lowers their defenses and improves their decisions in day-to-day life.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And I know, Sharon, I know you have been monitoring a really challenging and frankly gut-wrenching challenge that's taking place with physicians and nurses who have contemplated suicide or were sadly lost. And, you know, we often think of healthcare as just these warriors, and they are, but sometimes we leave the best and brightest sort of out to dry because they're dealing with so much. So let's talk about the development of the Thriving Clinician, which is, as you just said, interactive. It's an interactive training program for clinician well-being. You and your team have interviewed more than 80 doctors and nurses to create the themes and characters for this program. Tell us a little bit of how you identified the challenge and perhaps how this incredible monumental task came together.
Interestingly enough, we have a long and wonderful relationship with Yale New Haven Health and the Yale School of Medicine. And this project was born over a dinner conversation prior to the pandemic, never imagining what was about to befall us the following year. And because we had been applying our technology with them to other issues such as sexual harassment and abusive conduct in healthcare, the idea came up of how do we tackle the terrible problem of physician suicide. Prior to the pandemic, we were losing one doctor every day. The physician suicide rate is 2 to 3 times the rate of the average population. And so we said, well, let's get the stories of real clinicians, the actual events, put them into the format that allows learners to make decisions and see the outcomes of those near and long-term choices and see if we can do better than what was done. And of course, COVID and the pandemic have exacerbated these problems terribly. We're now getting statistics, 61% of physicians are reporting burnout. A quarter of them are saying they want to retire, leave the profession in the next year. Nurses are committing suicide, women nurses at twice the rate of the average women population. And so what we have done here is given people a tool, given institutions a tool for modifying their culture, for destigmatizing mental health and emotional well-being, the needs of clinicians, doctors and nurses, so that we can talk about these things. We can have a dialogue at the individual level, at the organization or institutional level. And really, it's a public health crisis because we are all consumers of healthcare.
And those numbers are staggering, Sharon. Again, I'm chatting with Sharon Sloane, the CEO of Will Interactive, the company that created the Thriving Clinician. Staggering numbers, again, of suicide, frankly, and just a lack of overall work-life happiness, which you touched on one of my questions, which is just COVID. And you were working on this pre-COVID, which is just crazy. And I can only imagine it's gotten far worse. But I am curious how all of this impacts the world of bringing in future physicians. Are you playing a role in in how you hope to change the future of the profession?
Absolutely. It's critical that we educate the young physicians, the residents, on the importance of mental health, and that the cultures of the institution in which they go supports well-being. It says it's okay not to be okay. Let's talk about that. Let's see what can be done. Let's confide in each other. It will improve patient outcomes. It will reduce the problem we have with retention of our best and brightest. We're facing the statistic that a quarter of our physicians say they want to retire in the next year. And only half of the doctors we talk with now say they would recommend medicine as a career. So this is a crisis that goes from the most senior executives and physicians in our healthcare institutions to the brand new doctors that are just coming into the profession. And these stories resonate with them. We've had amazing feedback on this program. Yes, I know someone who was just like that character. I've seen people struggle with this issue. 1 in 5 physicians tells us that a colleague or friend has either considered, attempted, or died by suicide since the pandemic. So we have to do something different. The tool that we're providing here is completely different than the normal wellness programs, many of which have great value. But it was interesting that in the latest study by the Physicians Foundation, 70% of the physicians said that we must include evidence-based professional training to prevent mental strain and illness. And that is what the Thriving Clinician does, can be used anytime, anywhere, on your learning management system, on your phone, on your tablet. And then it brings people together to have the dialogue, to have these difficult conversations, and to support each other, which is really what we all must do, regardless of where we are in this process, and come together.
And we only have a minute or two remaining, but I just want to touch on the process of filming and interviewing more than 80 doctors and nurses to create the themes and characters for the 100+ videos, which were shot on site during COVID-19 with, of course, social distance guidelines in place. What was that process like, Sharon?
Well, it was very interesting having our crew and in masks and social distanced, but we were able to do it safely in a real hospital that fortunately had a wing that had no patients or clinicians. I have to give a shout out to my chief creative officer and the extraordinary team that pulled this off, and our partners at Yale. It was so important to do it. We did it safely, but filming a movie during a pandemic with all of those people on location, I have to tell you, Shalom, was quite a feat.
That's incredible. So we're running out of time, and I want to make sure our listeners know where they can learn more about the Thriving Clinician and all of your work at Will Interactive. Sharon Sloane, how can people get a hold of you?
Email Sharon, SHARON, at willinteractive, all one word.com. I'm also very active on LinkedIn. And of course, through our website, willinteractive.com, can reach me as well. And we still answer our phones here. So feel free to reach out by the phone numbers that are also on our website. And we welcome those conversations.
I appreciate the innovation that you are creating at Will Interactive. I encourage all of our listeners to get on your website, willinteractive.com, and of course, email you, Sharon at willinteractive.com. The Thriving Clinician, again, a first of its kind interactive training program for clinician well-being. And Sharon, thank you so much for doing that. We are going to squeeze in a quick break with some headlines and some commercials. And when we come back, we're going to talk more all about small business jobs and entrepreneurship here on Get Down to Business. So again, don't touch that dial. We will be right back.